Let's return now to China and the Pacific, get some analysis. Michael Shoebridge, a Director of Defence and Strategy at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, is with me. Michael, great to see you. Penny Wong in Fiji, the first of, we're told, a blitz of the region, a number of visits over coming weeks. Is that the right approach?
Kieran, it is. It's great that she barely got off the plane back from Tokyo and she's already doing what Labor said they would do during the election. So Labor said they would engage personally with the South Pacific. That's exactly what she's doing right now. But there's a bigger problem, which is Beijing is maybe moving faster than Canberra expected.
So when you say that, are you talking about that other proposal, a draft communique that's been circulated among 10 Pacific countries? There's been some pushback on that already, though, within the Pacific community from at least one country. What's your sense of it? Will it fly among other members of the Pacific?
Well, Kieran, you're right. It's a draft security pact for 10 Pacific nations that visiting Chinese State Councillor Wang has provided to his South Pacific counterparts. If we thought the Sogavare-Beijing deal was bad, this one is bigger and worse. But you're right, not every nation is immediately going to sign on. But think about Beijing, they're collecting like a pack of cards, like a pack of cards. So they don't need all 10 to sign up. If they get one or two, they're better off than they were before.
Yeah, and with the Honiara deal, what's your read on that? Is it driven by one small cohort of politicians? Does it have widespread appeal? Could it be knocked over if there's a change of government?
I definitely think it's Sogavare dependent. It's been a product of Chinese money and Sogavare himself. I don't think the population in the Solomons really understands what he's signed up to. I think Sogavare thinks he does, but I think he's wrong.
We're starting to see already China throw its weight around in terms of the media allowed to attend and ask questions of the Chinese foreign minister during... We're going to have that news conference, incidentally, this afternoon live to air, but apparently some restrictions around that and a bit of a reminder of closer engagement brings with it various other maybe more onerous requirements.
Yeah, Kieran, you're right. That's not really a press conference. There's one question from a Solomon Islands journalist. There's one question from Chinese state television. This is really starting to show what you get when you sign up to these deals with Beijing. So it's really interesting. The Solomon Islands journalists, a number of them are boycotting that event.
Are you reassured by the message from the new government, from Mr Albanese, particularly in terms of the continuity when it comes to the Chinese coercion and aggression in the region?
Yes, I am, because I think we've heard a lot over the last five years about the bipartisanship on national security, but now we're starting to see it in action. And I think the fact that Penny Wong and Anthony Albanese were talking directly with people like Joe Biden, Prime Ministers Kishida and Modi from Japan and India, they will have got the message that, you know, the previous government wasn't making this up. Our partners are as focused as we are. And on the South Pacific, I think the climate change gap has been closed, but there's a lot more to do. We need a bigger, better offer than Beijing can make.
Well, that climate element is an important piece for those Pacific neighbours, isn't it? It has been for a long time.
It is. It's one of their top concerns. But I think for us, we need to be much more upfront with the South Pacific leaders and people about the downsides of entangling yourself with authoritarian China. We know what we're talking about with that.
When you look at this statement by Frank Bainimarama, the Fijian Prime Minister, he says he's meeting with Penny Wong and then he'll meet with the Chinese Foreign Minister next Monday. He says at all tables, what matters most is our people, our planet, and as well as respect for international law. An interesting point right at the end there in that message you put out.
Yes, I think we know Fiji is a proudly sovereign nation. It took some time to rebuild the partnership. That's in great shape now, as Penny Wong will build on. But it's worth listening to that, and it's worth hearing the undercurrent about rule of law and international law. That's really part of what we're offering.
Are there any vulnerabilities that we should particularly focus on in the Pacific other than, say, the Solomons, in terms of where China's draft communique might gain some momentum more than other countries?
I think so. I mean, if I had to pick a couple, I'd say Vanuatu and Kiribati are vulnerable small Pacific states. I think the good news is Sogavare has done us all a bit of a favour by bringing some of the downsides out early. Maybe it was a mistake from Beijing to not just present this plan to 10 nations rather than have the Sogavare thing happen first. But really, we've got to do more than think aid, climate change and engagement are the answer.
One of the other things that analysts in this space believe, the Pacific, where the former government didn't have enough focus, is the Pacific Islands Forum, and then that was allowed to wither, essentially. Is that a forum where we should go back and try and rehabilitate it and strengthen that?
Yes, and I think, again, this is Penny Wong starting the right way. She's going to give her major speech at the Pacific Island Forum. That's another really good signal. Again, climate change made that a difficult forum for Australia. That's not the case anymore. But really, access to our labour market and our economy in a much bigger way than what we have now, that's the big answer for Australia and the region.
And just finally, always, I guess, with a respect for their own sovereignty as nations without overstepping that mark.
Well, exactly. You think about the Australia-New Zealand closer economic partnership. That's the kind of offer that retains sovereignty and brings benefits.
Michael Shoebridge, Director at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, thank you as always.